And I mentioned this in my, whoops, Hey everyone! If we haven't met before, my name is Katrina Walser and I am from Oliphant Cat, and I am a knitting teacher and designer based in Sydney in Australia. So today I am going to walk you through how to make the stepping stone scarf, which is a pattern that I wrote 3 or 4 years ago now, but I've rewritten it for an Australian yarn. I have been really intent on rewriting as many of my patterns as I can into using yarns that you can buy in Australia for lots of different reasons, but I think buying local is great, so you don't have to ship things from overseas. So this is Abbey Road Born to be wool, which I did a full yarn review on last week. So if you want more details about the wool itself, then you can take a look at this video that I've linked up here. So I have been remaking this scarf in the Abbey Road wool, and I'm really loving how it's turning out. I would say that this is suitable for advanced beginners or adventurous beginners. If you've never done cables before, it's a great first experiment in doing cables. So I will show you some of the trickier parts, but you do also need the pattern. So there's a link to where you can buy the pattern down below. And once you've got that, let's just get to it. All right, so let's make a scarf. So what you're going to need for this is, first off, the yarn is Abbey Road Born to be wool. You're going to need 4 or 5 balls. You will also need a pair of 12mm needles. I don't know what this is in US sizes. It's something ridiculous like 17 or 19 or something like that. That's all you really need. And then the 2 optional things that you can use that will be helpful are a cable needle. So I don't actually own any cable needles. We'll see why soon enough. But this is the tip from one of my interchangeable sets. And then you can also use 2 stitch markers. It can be difficult to find stitch markers that are big enough to fit needles this thick. I just happened to have a couple, which was nice, but you can use some scrap yarn and just cut short lengths and tie little loops that are big enough to fit over the needle, and you can use those as stitch markers. So you can use whatever cast on you like for scarves. I am going to be using a cable cast on, and you need 18 stitches. So the reason I like cable cast-ons for scarves is that I find them really neat, but they're also a little bit inflexible. But in a scarf, you don't really need it to be stretchy at all. So I like to use cable cast-ons. So if you need to learn how to do a cable cast-on, I made a little video on how it works, so you can check that out at this link up here in the top. And go ahead and do that for 18 stitches. Okay, so the way that this pattern works is that there is a small repeat section which is given in both charted and written instructions. And so it is a scarf with a 3-stitch border on either side. The first 3 stitches and the last 3 stitches are always a knit, a purl, and a knit. And then the section in the middle is 3 repeats of the chart that's in the pattern. And so the first couple of rows are just knits and purls. But what I will say is that it can be helpful in the very first row to put down your stitch markers to mark those first 3 stitches at the borders, because the pattern is simple enough that you can just end up like mindlessly knitting your way across the row. And I find that reminding myself that the last 3 stitches needs to be a knit and a purl and a knit is helpful, so I don't accidentally break the border. So that's 3 stitches. So I'm going to put this here. And then for the first 2 rows, just follow the instructions that are in the pattern. And the 3rd row has some special stitches that I want to actually demo to you. The way that this pattern comes together is that it has a couple of 2-stitch cables. Since they're only 2-stitch cables, these are some of the easiest cables you can learn to do without a cable needle. So I would strongly encourage you to try it. And even if you've never done cables before, this is how I learned how to do cables. I learned to do it without a cable needle. So you can totally do it. I'm going to show it to you a couple of times. The first couple of times I'll show you how to do it English, and then the last time I'll show you how to do it Continental. All right. So the first cable twist is what I call a right leaning purl twist, because it's one stitch leaning to the right over a purl background. So the way you do it is you take the tip of your right needle and you insert it into the second stitch on the left hand needle through the front here. And then you wrap the yarn around like you were going to knit, and you pull it through like you were going to knit, but you don't take any of the left hand loops off. And then you move the yarn to the front, you insert the right hand tip into the first stitch purlwise, and then you wrap the yarn around like you're going to purl, and you pull that loop through as a purl stitch. So now you've got 2 stitches on the right hand needle and 2 loops left on the left hand needle, so you just drop those 2 off. Don't worry, I will show you that again. The second cable twist is a left leaning purl twist, and this one is slightly trickier, and this is the one that's a little bit scary, so bear with me, you'll be fine. So make sure your yarn's in the back of the work. So what you do is you insert your needle purlwise and you slip the first stitch off, and then you move your yarn back to the front, you insert your needle purlwise and you purl this stitch and just purl it like normal. So now you have this slip stitch here and the stitch you just purled. And then what you do is that you insert the tip of your needle into the front of the slip stitch, and this is the scary bit. Okay, hold this tight. So the way I grip it is I put my thumb on this stitch and I put my forefinger behind the purled stitch you just did. Hold it tight and then pull the right hand needle out. So this is how I'm holding it. See how I've got it pinned? So you pull the right hand needle out and then you stick the tip of the right hand needle back into this loop here. So this is the loop of the purl stitch, just stick it into there. And so when you pull that apart, now it looks like this, and then you just knit this stitch here. So again, don't worry, I will show you all that again. So right hand twist, yarn in the back, stick your tip of your needle into the second stitch on the needles, knit, pull the loop through, but don't pull anything off the left hand needle, move your yarn to the front, insert the tip of your right hand needle into the first stitch on your left hand needle, purl, and then pull both of these loops off. And then the left hand one, move the yarn to the back, insert purlwise and slip off, move the yarn to the front, purl this stitch, move the yarn to the back, and then insert the tip of your left hand needle into the second stitch on the right hand needle. Hold these 2 stitches tight, and I'll show you what's actually happening when you do this bit. So hold this tight and pull it out of both of them, and then put it back just into this one. And then knit the first stitch on your left hand needle. So hopefully that was slow enough. If you need to go back, just like I will bookmark those stitch demos in the description below. So if you need to go back and watch it a couple of times, slow it down, go ahead and do that. But I will also show you how to do it Continental style now. So exactly the same, it's just that you're holding the yarn in your left hand. So first off, we have a right hand twist. So insert the tip of your needle into the first stitch on the right hand side and knit it. Move the yarn to the front and purl. And then slip these 2 off. And then left hand twist, insert and slip, purl, stick the tip of your right hand needle in here, hold them tight. It's easiest if you drop the yarn at this point. Hold them tight, pull your right hand needle out, and then stick it in to the second loop. And then knit this stitch. So for my Continental knitters, I know that I did that quite quickly, but it's actually easier to demo what's going on when you do it English style. So hopefully you can watch the English version and then figure out how that translates to Continental relatively easily. Okay, so the next 3 rows are just knits and purls. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So if you take a look, this is what the left and the right twists look like. These are the original knit columns, and then they twist out to the left and to the right. And the purls have come into the middle there. So we are now at the next row where you do have to do the twists again. So this time I'm going to do them with a cable needle to show you how to do that. And there are full instructions for this in the pattern as well. It gives you instructions for both how to do it with and without a cable needle. Okay, so left hand twist. Take your cable needle, slip this first stitch onto it purlwise, hold it in the front, purl the first stitch on the left hand needle, then move your yarn to the back and knit the stitch off of the cable needle. And then for the right twist, take your cable needle, slip the first stitch purlwise onto the cable needle and hold it in the back. Knit the first stitch. And then purl the stitch off of the cable needle. And for my Continental knitters, let's see if I can do this with the cable needle. So, left hand twist, slip the first stitch onto the cable needle, hold it in the front, and then purl, and then knit off of the cable needle. Then for the right hand twist, slip the first stitch onto the cable needle, hold it in the back, knit the first stitch, and then purl the second stitch. So, as it may be obvious, I'm pretty awkward with the cable needle because I genuinely do not use cable needles. So I would really recommend that you try it. Try the version that doesn't have the cable needle, just because it's pretty fun actually. And it's just so much, I don't know, I find it so much faster. And because these are only 2-stitch cables, it's a perfect time to try it out. So those are all the stitches you need for this scarf. And I will come back and show you how to join the second ball. It might be interesting to see that, especially with yarn this chunky. But for now, I'm just going to go ahead and knit all this. So this is the little corner of my craft room where I am literally sitting right now and I just really like it because it has my ball winder and my Swift and stuff, and it's just a fun place to sit and knit. And it also has my laptop, which means I can watch knitting podcasts as I knit. So I'm pretty sure right here I am watching Down Under Dyer's podcast. So if you don't already watch Mel and you really like watching or listening to Aussies talk about knitting, then definitely head over to her channel after this video. Finish this one first and then go watch Mel's channel because it's great, and she makes a bunch of lovely yarn and always has these really cool projects on her needles. So it's time to attach the second ball, and I decided to wind all of my balls into cakes because I did try and work from the ball initially, but it just sort of rolled around on the floor because I didn't have a yarn bowl that was big enough to fit the ball inside because these balls are just so big. So I found it was easier to just wind it into a cake because then I could fit it into my yarn bowl and it didn't roll around on the floor anymore. Okay, so this is what it looks like after one ball's worth of yarn. This is what the texture looks like. It does look a little squished on the needles, but when you pull it apart, it just sort of opens up and it's really gorgeous. So I think I'm going to block this at the end just to try and convince it to stay flat and open and actually look like it's meant to. So I wanted to show you how I join a new ball of yarn. So for this pattern, I would really, especially if you're going to do the method that I'm about to do, I would really recommend only joining a new ball at the very end of the row. So the way I join a new ball is I take the old strand and I take the new strand and I hold them so that the old one is facing like this and the new one is running in the opposite direction. So the ends are pointing at opposite ends. And so you hold the yarn double for a while, and you do want to leave a little bit of a tail on the new ball. And you just hold them double. So for yarn this chunky, you can probably get away with only doing it for like 3 stitches. But usually I will do 5 just to be sure. But I didn't leave a long enough tail even in this case to do 5. So I'm just going to leave it like this. And so essentially what you've done is that you've weaved your ends in as you go. That's why holding it double is great. And when you come back the other direction, just remember that these double stitches are actually doubled up and you want to treat them as 1 stitch. And that's it. So I've joined my second ball, so I'm just going to go ahead and keep going. So one of the things that surprised me the most about this scarf was how quick a knit it was, because it's been a really long time since I worked with yarn that's this chunky. And I think end to end, it was done in about 5 hours, and it is not a small scarf. It's, I think, 1.6 meters long and about 20 centimeters wide. So it's a decent amount of material. And it just knit up so fast. So I knit a little bit at a Zoom knit night, which was really fun. Ira, if you're watching, thank you for organising. Please organise another one soon. And then I was knitting here on the couch watching Well Loved Knits, who is a podcaster from, I think from Belgium. She's American, but she lives in Belgium. And so I really like her podcast because it's not really like a podcasty podcast. It's a bit more educational than just a straight up podcast. And then for the home stretch with the last ball of yarn, I decided to just snuggle up in the corner, also in my lounge room. And okay, so I'm laughing to myself because I was watching the Try Guys, who just run this like comedy channel on YouTube that I just find rather amusing. I can see why it would annoy people, but they do have a video where they try knitting for the first time, so that's quite fun. So if you have any recommendations for knitting or non-knitting related things I should be watching while I'm knitting, please let me know, because I really do spend most of my time watching either Netflix or YouTube. Or, okay, really I spend most of my time watching Disney Plus, but I'm on a bit of a Marvel kick at the moment. But if you have recommendations for anything that I should watch, please let me know, because I would love to know. but this is me getting to the actual bind off. So I'll wrap up here and then show you how to bind off and block. Okay, so here is the end of the scarf. I bound off quite a bit already, but I was going to show you step by step how to do a bind off, and then I realized that it was just a very long explanation. So if you are a beginner and you would like to know how to bind off, I pulled all of the step-by-step instructions out again into a separate video, which I've linked up here in the corner, so feel free to go watch that. But otherwise, you just bind off all the stitches using whatever bind off you feel like using. So I'm going to do that now. Now, the thing I want to show you next is that the texture of this is really cute, but it's actually even better when you stretch it out a little bit. So to do that, we're going to have to block it. And I normally wet block everything, which means you just dunk the whole thing in some water and let it soak in the water and then pin it out to dry. But with this yarn in particular, if you do that, you're going to end up with a wet, soggy mess. So I'm going to try what's called steam blocking, which is doing it with an iron. Alright, so I wove all my ends in, and what I'm going to do now is block my scarf, and I have never steam blocked anything before. I know how it works in theory though, so we could try and learn together. So here's my blocking board. If you're going to do this, make sure you have something under the thing you're blocking, so you don't ruin your table, or do it on an ironing board. And I'm just eyeballing this because I don't want a particular size. I just want the hexagon texture to show up. All right, so that's as long a section I can get on my board. And then what you do is you take your iron and you put it on the maximum steam setting. Here it is, and you just put it close but not on. That's the important part. Don't put it on your piece. Just want to put it close enough that the steam sort of gets into it. So it definitely smells like wet wool, which is probably a good sign that the steam's getting in. So it feels sort of damp. Let's give it a sec to dry. All right, let's see what happened. Ooh. I mean, it's not shrinking straight back in. And I think it worked. So if we do a comparison, this is what it looks like unblocked, and this is what it looks like blocked. So that's pretty cool. I think it worked out. It definitely feels damp still, so I may give it a sec to dry before I do the next section. But yeah, I'm just going to keep doing this and then we will regroup and I'll show you the final product. Pretty excited. And so here she is. We're all done. So for the rest of the blocking process, what ended up happening was I did that steam blocking process in a couple of different sections just because my table wasn't big enough to just pin the whole thing out and steam it on the table in one go. And I wasn't really the biggest fan of the idea of crawling around on the floor with an iron because it seemed a little bit unsafe. But after I blocked the whole thing, it was actually a little damp. So I pinned it out to the size and the shape that I wanted it to be, and I left it overnight to just dry and like cool down because obviously the steam is sort of hot, and it worked out a treat. It was dry the next morning, which is not something that normally happens when you wet block wool. So it was great. And I'm really excited with how the texture turned out. So I really love this scarf. I actually finished it a couple of days ago now, and I've been wearing it around, and it's just lovely and cozy. I've had people tell me that you don't need yarn this chunky in Australia, and I'm actually finding that that's not true, mostly because it's really cold in the house all the time. Like when I lived in New York, the heating was so strong in our apartment that some days we had to just leave the door open to the porch because it was too hot inside, even though it was literally snowing outside. But in Sydney, I'm just like cold all the time. So I've actually been wearing this around the house. I feel like I'm being a better person for the environment if I'm not running the heater all the time. So it's lovely and warm, and also I'm glad that I rewrote the pattern, not just because I found an Aussie yarn, but also it's a pattern that I've been wanting to revisit for a while because the original pattern was a little bit impractical in how big it was. It was maybe another 2.5, 3 centimeters wider than it is now. So I didn't really wear it a whole lot. But now that it's a little bit smaller and a little bit shorter, it's actually been a lot easier to wear. And so I'm glad I managed to take another shot at the pattern because I really like this version and I can see myself wearing it a lot. I hope this has been helpful in like getting a preview of how to make it, or if you're trying to make it yourself, just getting some help to make the scarf. If you do still want to grab the pattern, so this version of it is going to be released on Saturday, which is the 31st of July. So if you're watching this after that date, just ignore everything I'm about to say. There's a link to the pattern in the description box below, and there is also a coupon code for you as a thank you for watching my YouTube channel. But if you are watching this before the 31st of July, it is still the old version that's written for We Are Knitters wool that is a little bit bigger. But if you buy it now, I will update everybody who has bought the old version on Saturday and send them all a free copy of the new version. So if you are overseas and you do still want the We Are Knitters version, or if you're just curious to see what the differences end up being, definitely go grab it now. There is still the coupon code in the description box and that'll work whenever. So that is the scarf. I hope you have fun making it, and I would really, really love to see all of your makes if you do end up grabbing it. So feel free to link me down below to any Ravelry projects you have, or tag me on Instagram. I am at OliphantCat. And if you are watching this close to the release date, don't forget to enter the giveaway. It is still running. I will be drawing the winner next Monday or Tuesday. So if you haven't done so yet, go pop over to this video and take a look at the description for how to enter, and I will hopefully be able to add your name in the running for the yarn giveaway. So thank you so much for watching, and have fun with knitting your scarves, and I will see you next Thursday.